Joining me today is local poet James McInerney. Hello, James. Do you have a favourite poet?
I don't know, because I really didn't grow up reading a lot of famous poets. I grew up in Poets' Corner, which was weird, which is very weird. But we didn't really learn it at school. That's the thing. And I even spoke to one of my former teachers, and she said poetry wasn't really big at school when I was there. I didn't really push it. You probably learnt about Shakespeare, but you didn't look at all the latest contemporary poets.
That's true. I know when I was at school, it certainly wasn't part of the national curriculum. If indeed we ever had something called a national curriculum, is it more a part of the national curriculum? Can't even say it. Is it more a part of the national curriculum now in schools? Or?
Yeah, because of the latest government, I think they've kind of put it back into the GCSEs now. It's definitely become big poetry now, which is why I'm kind of really busy myself as well. But yeah, my son at school, in secondary school, is currently learning about poetry and the famous poets, and then they're looking at newer poetry. So there really is a big push in all areas for poetry now, and it's becoming really popular. Right, which is good.
And are they also going with teach? Can you teach somebody to write poetry?
I think you can. I think everyone's kind of got it, because they're lyrics as well, to a song, the same kind of thing, and anyone could write a song. I think people just kind of think they can't do it, and that kind of puts them off, or they hear poetry, and because what they know of poetry, it puts them off. So it's changing people's ideas of what actual poetry is. And actually, if you look at it differently, you could probably write poetry, and it's just kind of getting their mindset in that what you think poetry is actually not nowadays. It's a completely different kettle of fish, and have a go. And I think a lot of people have tried that, and I've spoke to and really loved it. So
I think a lot of people think that poetry has to rhyme for a start, and it doesn't, does it?
No, I don't think it does. I think I'm looking at people's writing nowadays. It really is how they feel at that moment. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be structured in a certain way. And I think if you put all these things in place where it's got to rhyme, it's got to have a certain structure, it is off-putting. And I know for me, if I write stuff and I have all these restrictions, you kind of lose creativity side. You become too rigid of how you write. And my best poems have kind of been ones where I've just wrote down an idea, and it's turned out really good. But if you really overthink stuff too much, or you get these boundaries that you can't do this, can't do that, it puts people off. And I think you've got to get rid of all of that and say to people, just write how you feel. And it kind of that's the modern poetry today. And I think that's what people really accept as poetry now, and really engage it and like it.
James, what's the typical day then for a modern day poet?
Well, it's the day job first, because it doesn't always pay the bills. And then it's basically kind of listening to music. And I always carry pen and paper with me everywhere I go, basically. And my mind is always thinking poetic thoughts, and just walking around aimlessly writing stuff, staring at things and writing. And that's basically it. Yeah, it's just basically trying to write the next poem, and then when you've wrote that, it's thinking about the next one. It's just a constant writing with a gap in between to give your mind a break. Otherwise, it all becomes the same. And that's it, really. Listening to good music and kind of hopefully writing a good poem from it.
Yeah. At what point did you think that you'd actually like to expand on what was obviously initially just a hobby?
Well, it was kind of like the media interest, because I first started writing a long time ago, and a friend of mine, Helen, agreed to voice some of my work, and then it opened a whole new chapter for me. It went from just writing basically to having someone voice it, and I didn't think of that before, and it basically turned from there. It was kind of like I got a whole new interest in poetry then, looking at it from a different angle of hearing it being spoken in a very good way, and then from there it went to music versions of my songs, and it's just like exploring different areas. And that's where I kind of thought, hey, there could be something really good with this. And I've done such a lot of radio and doing this stuff in the media, in the magazines, and kind of promoting poetry, that I really feel as though it's a part of me now, more than just something I do in my spare time. I kind of do it all the while. Even if I'm at work, I'm writing poetry down, and it has become more than a hobby. It's become a kind of part of my life now.
Is it an obsession yet?
Yeah, it is. It's an obsession, which is a curse as well, because it is hard work, and you kind of feel frustrated all the while because you're trying to write something good, and the pressure's on to write something good, and it becomes not a chore, but it becomes hard work. and hard to put down.
You said one of the sort of early breaks, or when it sort of got a little bit easier, was when you had someone else voicing your poems. Did you like them, or did you? Oh no, I wish I'd have done that slightly different.
It is kind of hard to hear your poems played back, someone singing, because you're not sure that when you write something, you know how it's written and how it sounds. When someone else takes that poem and then reads it, did they make it sound the way you wanted it to sound? And I mean, I haven't had any problems yet. People have done really, really good covers of my work, and they've put their own creative spin on it, and they sound absolutely amazing.
Can you actually make a living, do you think?
I think you could if you were really, really popular with it and you had tons of books out and everything was going well. But I mean, I'm not so fussed about the money side of it. I'm more interested in me doing something and then seeing how it sounds and what I can do with it more. Like, can it be a really good song, or can it be acted really well? And that's more interesting to me, is what's around the corner next, you know, what I can actually do and how versatile it is for what I can do with it next, which is really exciting. That's more exciting than any kind of money if the books are selling good. But I'm more interested in how people look at it and are creative with my words.
Now, we mentioned earlier that whenever you mention poetry, people always tend to think, oh no, Shakespeare, boring Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare, known mainly, I suppose, really for the plays.
Yeah.
I suppose more than the poetry side of things. Have you considered going into that, into the writing of, say, a story, as opposed to, because obviously I suppose a poem is a story.
Yeah.
But have you considered expanding to a novel?
I think there's kind of a difference between novel writers and poets. I haven't got the attention span to write. Poems are good because they're a small poem in one piece, and then you finished it in one go. And it's probably an A4 piece of paper, and that's it. I don't have the attention span to spend like 6 months probably to write a book. I would kind of get bored halfway, and I think I like the idea of just being able to write an easy poem, and it's something that can take you a day or a week, and I enjoy that. And I just don't have the attention span.
But you've clearly got the imagination and the talent to do a poem, whether it's just an A4 one. Do you not think possibly push yourself and perhaps go on to short stories and perhaps developing?
I did actually write some short stories, and they're stored away on my computer at home. I did share some, and people really did like them. But there was kind of a poetic twist in it. It kind of like seemed to me still like a poem. It was less dialogue, it was more poetic in its nature. And I kind of think when I try to write a short story, it ends up being a long poem.
But surely, if it works in that case, it's working on two different levels.
Yeah,
surely it's worth expanding on that.
Yeah, I think it's something I'll really look into. I do like writing, any kind of writing. I like the idea sometimes to not have just be able to be free to write a short story and not make it poetic and sometimes like rhyme or sound poetic. I like the idea just to be different, and I've got quite a few stored on my computer. Whether or not there'll be a short story book out, a collection of short stories for 2014. So I don't know. It's just kind of like taking it day by day, and it's all like a big, not knowing what's going to be next kind of thing. It is weird.
What are you up to at this moment in time? I know you get up every day and you write some poetry and you go and lay a few bricks and do a bit of general building work. But we'll talk about your books in a little while. So I know you've got some books out. You've had some books out for quite a while. But moving forward, what's happening?
Well, this month I'm basically got more. I'm back on Milton Keynes radio, so I've got that to do to promote the book, and they're actually giving away a book, one of my books, signed copy of my books there. I'm back on the BBC in December. Also, I've got a lot of things to do with the council library service, where I'm currently in talks to them at the moment to do a book signing in Central Library in December, fingers crossed, meet the author kind of thing, and talks of like basically running workshops through the library service, teaching children from about 13 onwards, that kind of core age range, poetry, different writing skills, kind of like different styles. So it's all busy, kind of got really busy. And looking into next year, I've basically currently got some of the people who have covered my songs, my poems into song. They're getting radio airplay in the Netherlands and some in Indonesia as well. So that's starting in 2014 and this month.
All right.
So it's all like a mishmash of all different media things, and it's all going crazy. And then my book came out on Kindle as well. So that's just come out, and that's
going very well on Kindle.
Yeah, it's selling really well actually. So we've gone into we've obviously got a paperback version on Amazon, but it's gone into electronic version now, which is, to me, I mean, that's a no-brainer because it's really easy in the fact that it's a digital download. You can buy it the second you get it. You pay the money, you get it on your Kindle. You haven't got to wait for postage and packaging. You pay any of that, and it comes straight to your Kindle, and there's no delivery through the front door or nothing. So that is a really good format, and that is selling really well at the moment. Right.
I think we mentioned before when we spoke probably last year. Do you get much out of that?
You do. You get a small percentage. Obviously, with the Amazon, they take a big percentage. With that, probably more with the books because they have to print them and it gets printed and it goes off to the customer. But you get a bit more with the Kindle version because it's just a digital file that they have on their servers or wherever they have it, and then basically you get more because they haven't got to do anything apart from people just download it to their Kindles. So yeah, you do. But
where will this technology end?
Well, but to me, it's more not so much the money; it's more getting my work out there to a larger audience. It's okay having loads of money, but if you've got loads of your books in people's homes and they're reading it and it's more widely available, then to me that's more important than actually how much kind of money you make from it, which it is really small.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, I've seen on Twitter and on your website and that.
Yeah.
Your books, but it's being sold all over the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky in the fact that people send in pictures when they're from all around the world holding the book, and saying they've bought it, which is good for me. To put I then say thank you and put them on the website so people can see, and it's just really nice, to know that a book written in Northampton manages to get to Vietnam or to get to America, and people are buying it, and that's really important to me, and that's really nice.
Have you analysed yourself? Where in the world is James McInerney most popular?
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a chart and stuff.
Have you not got a map on the wall?
Yeah, with pins. Yeah, but I say it's really interesting that you could write something in Northampton, and then using social networking sites. It could be in Vietnam, the book. It can be on Amazon to buy, and then someone in Vietnam's reading it, buying it, and posting a picture of them holding the book, and it's just weird to me.
And from the people I've seen on your site and that, it's not. I mean, you think, it's people, it's ex-British people that have moved there, but it's not, is it?
Yeah, and I think also the good thing is people that you probably think wouldn't read poetry. You think to themselves, people, poetry, but actually people do like poetry, and it is still popular. And I think that's the difference, is that poetry is popular. You just got to sell it in a different way to people to make them really enjoy it. And I think that is really working well.
So is there a place in the modern world then for poetry, do you think?
I think there is. But if you change it, shake it up a little bit, make it more versatile, give it a different kind of look, and I think people, like all things, everything changes. You could stick with poetry and Shakespeare and all the famous poets, but you could shake it up, and I think everyone does that. Even in the music industry, people come along and they're used to music. Someone comes along with different, like you say, the Beatles, and in that year, and they change things, and or Elvis, and they make things different, and people look at something they probably wouldn't looked at before, and they see a different side to it, and it becomes popular. So hopefully with poetry, it can be popular again, and it is becoming popular. You just got to change the look of it.
We mentioned earlier, it's purely music that gives you an idea for a poem, then?
Yeah.
You don't sort of come up with an idea for a poem and then go and find some music?
Well, the strange thing is, the weird way I write poems is I'll probably write the middle first, and then the beginning and the end, and then I'll halfway through writing the poem, I'll probably think to myself, actually, this could be about something else, and I'll change it all. So I do a weird way of writing a poem. I don't start from the beginning, and sometimes actually when I write a poem, I don't actually know what it's about until I actually get so far down and think, oh yeah, that's what it's about. I don't really have an idea in my head of a direct what the story's going to be until I get to the end. So
how long would it take you to write a poem? I mean, what's the actual process? Do you get up in the morning and go, right, poem?
I don't know, because sometimes they can take a while, a week or 2 weeks, because A, life gets in the way, and B, sometimes I don't really have an idea of what the poem's going to be about, so I kind of like play around with a few ideas first, and then kind of like it can take a while. Sometimes I can write a poem, I have done, which have been really well in a day. And sometimes you could be in that creative mode where you feel really creative, and it just flows, and you're like, oh wow, this good. Sometimes you get up and like your brain, it's hard sometimes to get it going, and you have to really try hard to write a poem. So it can vary, and that's what I like about it, is the fact you don't know whether you're going to write a new poem today or whether it's going to be a bit of a really good poem. So it's hit and miss.
When you're doing your next book and you've got a deadline, it's got to be done by then.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to be able to say, I've got to do one today, or does it just have to happen when it happens?
Yeah, I think that deadline would kill me. I think it would be basically not very creative, because I think if you've got pressure on, like I've noticed before, pressure to write something, I don't think they're as good as they could be, because I like to look at a poem, read it back a few times and change bits and edit it, and doing that kind of style has produced some really good stuff. So if I have a deadline, I have done it. I have wrote poems for magazines and newspapers when I've been in them, and they have been good, but I think the deadline is a creative killer. It can really make your mind think. You're trying to think of a poem, but at the same time thinking, oh, I've got to get this written by a certain time, and you feel as though you rushed. And I think, to me, if I had a deadline like that, I wouldn't be happy with the end result, kind of, if it was a real tight deadline to get something out. So, I mean, the difference is, I suppose it's different with a poem, because each poem is kind of like an individual story in itself, mm-hmm. Whereas if you're writing a big story, so you've kind of got to go a whole story into a short verse, and it kind of is, that's the harder part of writing a poem.
Now, you keep tweaking a poem, keep going back and, I'll do that a little bit. What if I'll turn that around there, and I'll do that there.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, well, no, I like the last version, but do you ever revert to an earlier version?
I do, actually. Yeah, that's the killer. I'm my own worst critic, I am, and I think everyone really is, because if you write something, okay, you could put it online and people can read it and love it, but you yourself, if you're writing it, I go back and re-edit stuff. I've even wrote a poem and got so far through and then restarted again, and then actually realised that new bit I wrote actually liked the older version first, and it is frustrating because you're your own worst enemy, and you're constantly like against yourself that it's not good enough, and I do feel that way all the while. So it is hard work.
Do you ever sort of discuss poetry with other poets?
Yeah, I do. I meet a lot of poets online, Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing, but I don't know how many poets are out there. They're hidden away somewhere like me, because obviously poetry not so mainstream. Obviously, there's a lot of people that meet in crowded pubs and do poetry readings or whatever, but not really. No, I don't mix with a lot of poets, but obviously I do speak to a lot of them online and kind of collaborate and talk to them. But no, we need to come out from hiding.
Because the main reason I asked that, I wondered how sort of unusual it is to actually get your ideas from music.
Yeah, it is unusual. I think it's a really kind of a unique way of doing it, unless somebody else is doing it as well. But yeah, that's the only kind of like way I can do it. And like I say, like I've tried before, and it just doesn't really have the same impact. And I didn't even think about it. I just did it. Wrote to music. It been anything different? Kind of like it's always been the way. And when people say to you, "That's strange that you write to music," I don't think it has been strange, because it's kind of like I started doing it, and it's kind of like become it's normal to me now. And when I've got my headphones in and I've got a pen and paper in my hand, and I'm kind of, writing my poems down. To me, it's not strange. It's just kind of like a way that I do it.
Yes, yeah. We mentioned a bit earlier. How do you actually set about getting you write your poems?
Yeah.
Think, right, okay, I like that. I'll go and lay some bricks now.
Yeah.
But no, you're thinking, I want people to hear that, because not a lot of point doing it otherwise. Is
Yeah.
How do you do it?
How do you go about getting a book out? Or
well, how I mean, obviously you didn't. The first thing you did wasn't a book, was it?
No. It was just kind of like the first thing I started doing was writing poems, and actually going on a long, long time ago, news groups. And it used to be connected via your email. You could go to certain news groups and search poetry and things, and there'd be people writing in the news groups. And I started actually sharing my poetry in news groups a long, long time ago, probably 98. And I got a good response then. And I started moving to poetry websites that had message boards and forums, and started sharing. Because I think anyone who writes likes to share their work with people, because they want criticism and feedback, and they want to know if they love their writing, but they want to know if other people like it. And to me, that is very important as to whether people like it. And I kind of went from there. And then obviously the big bad Facebook came onto the scene, and that was just so much easier, and everyone was on it. And I just found I could write something in the day, share it at night, and get an immediate response. And I think people should start doing that. If you write, you should share it. Obviously, there's worries with copyright. You know, you don't want people stealing your ideas. But I think you've got to really get out there and share your work with people and see what the response is. And I've had such a good response that it kind of spurs you on to continue writing and doing what you do.
I mean, there's Facebook, and now there's Twitter, and lots of different social media outlets. But how important is social media to you?
Very. That's where I started off. But I think you've got to be careful of not to overdo the social media. There are so many websites and places like Facebook, Twitter, everything, that you could spend your entire lifetime sharing your work and updating things. I think you've got to just pick a core group of the most popular social networking like Facebook, Twitter, those kind of sites, and just concentrate on those. Obviously, you've got your website, which has got you on anyway, and anything you're doing, but you've just got to stick to the core social networking sites and basically don't try and spread yourself too thin everywhere, because you'll end up being run ragged, and there's so many of them, it'll just become a chore.
Which are the most influential, and is it Facebook and Twitter?
Definitely two. Facebook, Twitter. Obviously with Twitter, they're completely different sites. Twitter's 140 characters, that's all you get, whereas Facebook is everything, videos, the works. So Facebook and Twitter, I would say, are the two you really want to be on. And then have your own website to showcase what you're doing, so you can direct people to your website, especially if you're doing stuff in the media, and show them kind of like what you've done in the past and examples of your work and all that kind of thing, and where you can buy the book. So I think just the core value ones is Facebook and Twitter. There's places like Instagram you can use, but I would just stick with those two, really.
I think isn't that sort of like well, not necessarily a bolt-on, but I think it works with Twitter, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can do Facebook. You can have bolt-ons like with the Instagram. You can add it onto your Facebook. All that does is shares whatever you put on Instagram through your Facebook.
I think there used to be one called MySpace.
Well, that was owned by Justin Timberlake, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, originally it was the Facebook of its time. The bands were all uploading the music and everything, and it kind of like when Facebook came, it died.
Right.
And then they relaunched it, I think, with Justin Timberlake putting a load of money into it. And I still think it died. They tried to copy Facebook too much, and I tried to use it, and I just found it wasn't that good. So I kind of reverted back to Facebook. But it's definitely one you look at and think, do you really need it?
There is, moving forward, do you think there is any space for any more? Is there enough now?
Yeah, I think they're kind of like reached its limit now. I think Facebook is. No one's really. People have tried to rival Facebook, and kind of it just hasn't worked. You know, it hasn't got the popularity that Facebook has. And I think if Facebook ever disappeared, we'd all be lost. We wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. What are we going to do now? And it's just Facebook is the biggest and the best. So you stick with that one. Well, I do personally, anyway. To
be quite, I like Twitter best. I personally find Twitter more useful.
Yeah,
because there's an awful lot of news information, whether it's local news, national news, weather, all manner of things that it's probably on Facebook, but it's not in such a easily digestible little chunks, is it?
I think Twitter is like is a simpler form, but better than Facebook. Facebook, you can get kind of lost in people's videos and their pictures and everything, whereas Twitter is what it is. You know, it is like an update, 140 characters. I know they do video feeds now, and they do pictures. Mm-hmm. But I think Twitter is a good place to quickly, like you say, look at what's happening with your latest news. And it is good for that as well. So I do like Twitter. I go on and just update every now and then with what's going on. But definitely, Facebook. But Twitter, they're the two main ones, really, that everyone's using at the moment.
Now, you've got a website as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, I'm also on Google. So, I mean, if you just put my name into Google, everything that I've done over the years kind of comes up all in one big chunk. But my website is, I've got it written down, it's basically, if you typed in James Wix, W-I-X, poetry, it comes up, because my surname's a weird one to spell. But basically, because I've been on Facebook, like on the web so long, that your name becomes popular in Google searches. So if you just type James Wicks Poetry, it redirects you straight to my website, and it's pretty much the top. And I've got everything on there, everything I've ever done on the radio, in the newspapers and the magazines, all the people I've worked with who've turned my words into songs, all the voiceovers of my works, and everything I've ever done is all on there for an easy to look at thing. So I like the idea that everything's in one place with a website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it get many visitors?
It does. I get a report. Yeah, I get a report, and it really is. It is going up and up the page loads. But for me, that's a good point of reference if I speak to people, because nowadays people say, "Have you got a website?" You know, and if you speak to anyone like a magazine or a newspaper, come look at your website, and okay, you've got Facebook and Twitter, and they're not overly interested that they want to look at your website. So that's one of the real, like a core home base for me, is having a website and keeping it updated regularly, which I do, so I can showcase all the work and the things I've done. Right. So I would definitely say have a website. If you're an artist or something like, you have to have a website. As you can have Facebook and Twitter, but I would say have a website and get it all sorted out.
Okay. Radio Nim Valley guest today is local poet, Northampton poet, born in Poets Corner. What more could you want to be a poet there? That's James McInerney. Hello, James.
Hi.
We mentioned a little bit earlier your website address. Basically, just bung in James and Wicks and Poet, and it'll take you there. Or it's jamesmcinerney.wix.com/poetry if you want to remember that. But basically, just Google James Wicks Poetry.
Yeah, I mean, Google James Poetry, actually. Yeah, it comes up really, kind of all over the place, which is a bit scary. But I suppose you've got to be everywhere if you want to do anything.
Yeah. Now, photography also features fairly heavily within your online presence. How important is that to you?
Very. I started off, actually, when I was writing poetry, I loved black and white photography, and I actually, that's one of the things that was more important to me before poetry, kind of running the same thing at the same time. And I like black and white photography. I had a camera at home, which I was brought for Christmas or birthday. I can't remember which one it was. And I kind of started, like poetry, messing about with the camera, not really knowing anything about cameras, having a go at it and kind of doing my own style. And I think that's what you've got to do sometimes. You can be taught things, but I think sometimes when you learn things yourself, they become more tailored to you. So I picked my camera up and started doing black and whites and experimenting with different things. And actually in my book, there is a special edition signed version of it. Actually, it has about 60 photos that I've done, which I thought I'd incorporate because they're all different pictures of things I'm really interested, like visiting places and statues and doors, which I thought were very artistic. And a lot of pictures of Northampton in there that I really liked. So poetry is, again, creative. So I'm a very creative person. So everything I kind of do, whether it be poetry, photography, is really creative. So I kind of like both. You
do seem to favour black and white photos a lot.
Yeah, I do.
Do you think it why is that? Does it just give more of an artistic look?
Yeah, I think that's the poetic side of me coming out, because I think it's more stark. You look at a colourful picture and the colours all blend and they're lovely, but a black and a white stands out really well. And if you get the right kind of picture, like I did a statue of a kind of like a woman crying, like a statue, a marble one, and it was black and white and it looked really powerful. And I think, like poetry, there is a kind of a poetry in pictures as well, because people can look at a picture and like really fall in love with it as a poetic kind of creative side. And I think the two cross over very well, and that's why I kind of, that book, the special edition one, has both in it, because I thought I'd incorporate both. And I still do poetry, but it's getting the time. I'm so busy. It's trying to get a spare few minutes to take some photos. But I know photography is really popular nowadays, and everyone's kind of like into it. Amateurs are really having a go and producing some really lovely pictures.
Do you favour digital or traditional negative?
Digital. I kind of grew up in the digital era. I did grow up with the films. You take them into the shop and get them processed. You wait about a week for them to come back. But I like the idea, and they come back, and half the pictures aren't very good anyway. But I like the idea you could take a picture, look at it immediately, and then you can also edit it and change it on your computer and make it something more. So I'm kind of a digital age child.
Do you think, though, it tends to be that there's very few photos that are taken ever get printed now?
Yeah,
because like you say, you come back from the chemist with your little envelope with your 24 pictures. With there'd be 3 where there was a head missing, 4 where the sun had got in the camera, and all that
and
sort
the finger
of thing.
over the lens.
Yeah, exactly. But now you just don't. If there's a problem with it, you don't print it.
Yeah,
So
I think it's all about control. I think people like to have the element of control. I mean, in the old days, you'd take a picture. A, the camera would probably break anyway, but B, you'd send them in and keep your fingers crossed. You pay a huge amount of money to have them developed and just hope that you get out your holiday snaps 2 or 3 out of the 30. And it was expensive. In the old days, we used to go on holiday, and it's like, don't take too many pictures; it cost us a fortune. But now you've got free, instant results.
I know on occasions with the old 35mm films, you're taking pictures and you've sort of taken about 28, and it keeps going. Think, did the film actually catch at the beginning, or am I just taking nothing?
It's nothing.
So you end up you go and get your film back, and there's nothing.
But actually, nowadays, retro is coming back, and old style cameras they're becoming like poetry. I mean, everything retro is becoming popular now, and maybe it's a newer generation of children.
Can you still get the film?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, and you can also get them developed and everything. And I think it is becoming popular. I think the younger generation that never grew up with them like we did, suddenly never heard of them or never seen a digital like that kind of camera, are suddenly interested in it, and they're doing different things with it that probably we didn't do when we were younger. And it has become. I know that my son at school is currently learning photography, and they're all learning all the techniques, even like developing in the dark room. Even that kind of thing as well.
Is it just? Do you think it's perhaps just sort of nostalgia? Does it really have any purpose these days?
I don't know. I think it probably is, but I think sometimes you can get a better picture with the old style, non-digital.
But even with a cheap one, say it's like a sort of not a Kodak Instamatic, but a little sort of 110 type film, an old one. Can you get that as good as these sort of 20 megapixel? And
Well, I think people like to experiment. I think you could have a go with the digital, and everyone's digital nowadays. But I think people like everything. People like to look at what people have used in the past and have a play around with it and see what they can do. I mean, we had the original Polaroid where you press the button and it comes out the front.
Yeah.
And you pay a fortune for the cartridges of pictures. Mm-hmm. And then the picture comes out and it was rubbish. And you think, that was a waste of money.
And I seem to remember they faded very quickly as well. So.
Yeah, it used to come out and you shake it and then you get the picture come in. But yeah, it's all old retro stuff that people are curious about. I think people who've never been through it like we have are curious as to what it was, how you use it. And I think it's just a younger generation having a go.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think there is the nostalgia element. I don't see it coming back.
No.
Although, to be perfectly honest, I always chuckle when you see people get these sort of 20 megapixel cameras and all this sort of thing, and then they'll print it out on a £35 printer. Yeah.
Well, they're going up. The more and more, even the cameras nowadays, the phone cameras, the megapixels are going up and up and up, and you get 50 megapixels, and it's getting to the point of craziness.
Yeah, and then you try and print it on a cheap printer, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, it is just getting crazy. I mean, it's got to be a kind of level where you say, what we're going to go to 2,000 megapixels. It's going to start going up and up, and you think to yourself, something's going to, I think the sun will change soon, and they'll look at it a different way, because I love digital photography, but I think people are always trying to be innovative, and change things up. So I think it will all change again, like it's all changed with digital. It'll be something else coming up.
It always used to be a photograph never lies.
Yeah.
But it's far from it now, isn't it? With the digital
you can change
age.
everything. Yeah. You can change everything. And let's face it, all the magazines, when the photographers, they take pictures of the models and celebrities, they're all airbrushed and they're all changed as well. So we live in a world where we can change anything.
James, we've been talking about your poems for the last long time now. You can read one for us.
Yeah, well, this one is called Autumn Leaves, and going on the same principle of poetry in schools, an ex-teacher of mine, when I was in the Chronicle and Echo, actually emailed me and used this poem in GCSEs at one of the schools. So they used it and studied it, and it's called Autumn Leaves, quite apt, actually. I'm but an autumn leaf upon the ground, a remnant of all summers past. The ember sun above me shines to warm me on my bed of grass. My golden skin, now paper thin, moves in rhythm with the wind, and though I have no place to call my home, I still belong to where the seasons roam, be it summer, winter, spring or fall, regardless of the time of day. Oh, how I dance amongst a sea of souls, unafraid of change that comes my way. And though the years may differ each time around, I'll forever be an autumn leaf upon the ground.
Now, obviously very apt this time of the year, leaves all over the place.
Yeah.
What bit of music would have given you the idea to do that?
Kind of like a dancey, kind of like fast tempo kind of music. So
you're imagining the leaves
yeah,
getting all blown out
I
off the
just
trees?
and ironically I wrote that in straight away. That was just a one-off write. Sometimes I think if you overanalyze words too much and think about them too much, like I have done, it takes a while. But sometimes you can write some pretty good pieces just by having a go and just thinking of, again, like I said, with the music, it creates an image in your mind. And to me, like an autumn leaf, on the ground, and is what kind of made that happen. And I say it was used as a GCSEs, and they studied it in schools. So again, writing a poem in Northampton suddenly gets into a GCSEs, and people are studying your work in schools, like students. So again, if people who wanted to have a go at writing, there is kind of like a scope to do so much with your words that you've just got to put your mind to it and put yourself out there and go for it.
Good. Now, that was a short poem.
Yeah.
Are your short or your longer poems more popular, or do people basically just, it depends on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're using them for. I like to write kind of like long poems, and they work really well if people cover your work, like turn it into music form. The longer poems are much, much better, and they can get a song out of it. People who just want to read a short poem, and actually short poems are quite popular as well with people who just want to read poetry. They don't want to read 2 or 3 pages worth of poetry because it kind of like maybe gets boring or is too long for them, and they kind of lose what's going on. But sometimes the short, sharp poems actually work really well. People just want a bite-sized bit of information, and they want to read it there and then instead of going through 2 or 3 pages of poems. So they all have different aspects. If you're doing a song, the longer ones work. If you just like to read a short poem, so cater for all kind of tastes.
So short ones are effectively, I suppose, like a thought for the day, isn't it?
It is,
just something to have a read and think about.
It is, yeah.
Now, looking from the reader's perspective,
yeah.
Do I need to read one of your poems a few times to fully appreciate it?
Yeah,
Are they not necessarily complicated, but is there a little bit added depth to them?
Yeah, I think so, because of what I've found over the years is every time I write a poem, people will comment on it or they'll leave me feedback, and kind of I know what the poem's about because I wrote them, but people will have their own perception of what the poem is. So they'll read it and they'll see something about them in it, or something that's happened to them in it. And I think the good thing about poetry is you can go back, and like a story, once you've read it through, you know exactly what happens at the end. With a poem, you can read it and find different things in it. Every person will find something different, and even reading it over again, you might see something different that you didn't see the first time. So I think that's how it can survive poetry, in the fact that a book, once you've read it through, you know what happens to the characters, you know the ending. Whereas with poetry, it is different every time you read it, and you also, different people see different things in the words.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, hopefully.
Give that some thought. We'll have a couple more of your poems a little bit later, but is there a market for books of poetry? I mean, obviously there must be.
Yeah, I would think definitely more so now. Like I said, poetry's been reintroduced to children, and definitely back into the GCSEs and into their school curriculum. The current government have basically brought the whole thing back in, and it's kind of mandatory now that you learn about poets and poetry and you write your own poems and everything. So I think this kind of generation now growing up will know more about poetry and be more involved with poetry, which is exciting and good. And then from that, people like to read. So to have books out there, instead of just having the same classics like the Shakespeare, the Milton, the Byron, that everyone knows, or they probably don't, but they're always there. But I think there should be more poetry books from newer poets out there, so people can have an idea of what different poetry looks and kind of give them an idea of what they could do themselves, instead of just reading Shakespeare and then being put off by the old style text that you read in, it all looks back to front. But giving them new people to look at and kind of get inspiration from, and hopefully carry it on further generations to be.
Well, I know someone is interested in one of these books. Where can they get out? What have you got out there?
Well, there's a few. Basically, on Amazon is the main, because Amazon's the biggest bookseller in the world. So you've got to be
biggest everything seller, really.
Yeah,
isn't it?
oh yeah, it's definitely. So that's where you've got to be on. They're on Amazon. Just type James McInerney poetry. Actually, they're through my website. There's links all from my website to buy them anyway. But they're both on there. There's one which is just straight poems, which is cheap. Because I just wanted basically straight poems, and the other is special signed edition, which has got photography. But if you just search my name in Amazon, they come up, and you can buy them for all worldwide. So I mean, any country you're in, it doesn't have to be UK or America; it could be anywhere. And also on Kindle. So if you've got a Kindle device, type my name into the Kindle on the search, it comes up there, and you can just download it straight away.
And that is incredibly cheap, isn't it?
Yeah,
really,
the
Kindle books. So some of them are. I mean, I think it's like with downloads of CDs. Sometimes it's more expensive than the book.
Yeah,
and I think some of the sort of higher. Oh, I'm putting you down now. Some of the more well-known books,
Stephen King's.
They do tend to be almost the same price, if not more expensive, for a download. Otherwise, you want it now.
Well, I think mine's on there for about £2. Which is dirt cheap actually, but I like the idea of not necessarily to be expensive, but more to be that they're easily available to people, and that's why we went to Kindle and done that, because I want people to be able to get it instantly, not just have to wait for you to deliver through the post. And it doesn't matter what country you're in, you can download it anywhere. And I like the idea of just my words being out there so people can access them easily, and that's kind of thing. And I think actually Stephen King on his last book, he refused to do it on Kindle. You could only buy it in paperback. Obviously, he could see the way that the market's going, that everything's going to digital. Do
you think that's going to? Do you think printed books are going to actually lose out to e-books?
I think so. There is a worry, obviously, that all books are going to. People crave everything digital, and they want it now and they want it instantly. They don't want to have to wait for a book to be delivered or go into town and buy it from a shop. They want instant books.
But I like it.
I do love a book. Yeah. See, I grew up on books. When we were kids, going to the library, borrowing books, and turning the pages, and doing. I still read books.
Now, I tend to prefer to buy CDs, than actually get downloads. For much the same reason. Now, the aforementioned Amazon now do I'm trying to think what it's called, whether it's auto cut or whatever, so that you buy a CD, and you instantly get the download version as well. Yeah,
they do that with films as well. If you buy,
do you think they might do that with the books? So you can still get your book, but in the meantime,
they do actually do that with Amazon.
Yeah.
With Amazon now, they have a new deal going on where if you buy the book, I think you can get the Kindle version dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Or I don't think you get it free, but at the moment you get a real good high percentage off the Kindle version, so you pretty much get the Kindle version as well. So I think that they're kind of steering to that way as well. So like the authors sign up, and they sign up as part of a program that says you allow Amazon to, when they sell your book, also give a kind of cheap version of the Kindle version away as well. So I think that's the way it's going. But I do know that Stephen King was in the news saying that he could only get his latest book on physical hard copy. There was no digital downloads. But it is a worry that I'd hate to all the books to disappear and the libraries will disappear, and it would be books would be in a museum.
Yes, yeah.
It'd be oh, look at that, it's a book.
There is always, in my opinion, there's always something comforting about a bookcase with some books in.
Yeah. I still do love going to the library, because as kids we always went to the library, and I take my children to the library even now, and you can walk into a library or even a bookstore, and all the books on all the shelves, all different authors and all the colourful covers and jackets, and they just look so much more inviting than scrolling through a website and downloading the digital book. To me,
I think what people forget is that a good library, especially a central library like we've got in Northampton, is more than just a pile of books.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, I know from how I've used the library in the past, they have, or did have, I would assume they still have, every single copy of the Chronicle and Echo for the last 100 years or more.
They have them on the machine, yeah.
Well, when I used to research programs for here, they actually had the full Chronicle and Echo sized books.
Oh, did they?
And you actually read through the original newspapers.
I think the worry is that we lose everything.
Yeah.
You know, digitally, it is a bit worrying that something could go wrong and you lose a lot of information, you know, with cyber attacks and anything else. But if you got, I like the physical book in my hand. I like to be able to turn a page physically, and you're reading a book, and you can, if you go on holiday, you just take your book with you, stick it in the bag, you know.
Because I think with a book, it's not just the contents, is it? It's the design of it, it's the layout of it, it's the cover of it.
And it looks nice to be set on your shelf, and, you know, have a bookshelf, you know. Otherwise, we'll lose bookshelves. Otherwise, there'll be no such thing as a bookshelf.
I've got a colleague of mine down here who's actually started using Kindle, basically because he'd been banned by his wife.
Oh, really?
From having more books.
Yeah.
Because he goes too much space being taken up by
I had
books.
the same. I actually gave a lot of my books to the library. The ones that I'd read, I basically re-gave them, just donated them to the library, so someone else could read them. And which is what I also did with my books. Actually, when I first got my books out, the first thing I wanted to do, I donated a handful of them to the libraries. And I know a contact there, and it got circulated through Northamptonshire on the library service to basically borrow for free. Because people obviously pay for them, but I like the idea of people borrowing the books for free if you can't afford to pay for them. Still be able to go into your library, because I love libraries anyway, because you grew up going to library, to be able to borrow a book for free, and they're actually all out on loan, all of them, because I checked the catalogue.
Yes, because that's something else you can do online now, isn't it?
Yeah, so I just like the idea of that as well. So I think we should never ever lose books. I
also know from when I used to go to the library years ago that you get out a book, and if you particularly like that book, you will then go out and buy it as well, won't you?
Yeah. And I think I just love the whole idea of libraries, and I love books. I love going into a library because I just like the idea of going into a library, looking at all the colour books on the shelves and thinking, oh, what could I read today? You know, and then you can buy them for free, you know. So, and actually nowadays, libraries actually have quite a good stock of new books. They invest a lot of money into kind of getting the latest books that are out in the shops. A few months later, you can actually get it in the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a book and you think, oh, that's new, I can pay for that. They have kind of a lot of the latest books, especially Central, have a lot of the latest books that have been out like a month later. They're in stock on the library, which is really interesting. So never give up on books, I think.
No, and also to make them even more accessible, they're actually open on Sundays now as well, aren't they?
Yeah, the new hours, yeah, which is easier as well.
Social media, local radio, local press, magazines. What else can you do to promote your work?
I think just kind of like doing the same as I always do. It's kind of sticking to something that I know works. What I've done with poetry, which I think is really important, is I've diversified it. So obviously I've had written poetry, and everyone can do that and have it written. But I've kind of like diversified with doing actors doing voices, music, and I think there's always something different you can do with it. And I think it is a versatile subject that you can always shake it up. And to me, that's very important, which is why the next thing with the council doing the workshops is kind of like a different direction going in, and teaching other people poetry and showing them a style. And I think there's always different things you can do with poetry. I mean, I've even had poetry where people have had tattoos of it on their body. I wrote a poem for someone, and she basically got the whole thing tattooed down her body, which was a different way again. You
didn't get in touch and say the other 8 verses will be with you next week?
Well, I basically, the important thing was that there was no spelling mistakes, because I originally sent it to her. She asked me to write one, which I've done for free, of course, because I like poetry anyway. And she retyped it back up, and she had spelling mistakes in it. I said, you better check that before you get it tattooed on your body. And that actually got picked up by Pick Me Up magazine, like a national magazine. They took a photo of her, and they spoke to me, and it was all. But like from that, being versatile and doing different things with it, from writing a poem to being on someone's body, you know, permanently, and then to getting in a national magazine with it and doing all things with that, it was just weird. But I mean, it just goes to show that you never know what's around the corner next. There's always. I like to be versatile and try different things that you wouldn't expect of poetry, just to see what happens. And if it doesn't work, that's fair enough. But if it does, you know, it's another string to your bow, isn't it? So I just like doing different things.
Well, you've done performances here and on other radio stations, and in written stuff for magazines. How much of a shock do you think these workshops and things like that are going to be?
I think it's going to be like a delve into the known for me, because I'm used to writing privately, but obviously to teach other people that is going to be weird. But I think it's going to be exciting because it's something different that you don't normally see out there, doing things with music with people and kind of getting, it's not going to be so, it's more going to be looking at creative side, because I think the worry is that if you call it poetry, people who come to the workshop are going to be a bit, we might lose some members before they even start. So it's going to be kind of looking a creative spin with poetry at the core and kind of like doing different things like I've done with my work, music, acting, and getting people liking poetry, not realising they're actually liking it. And I think to me, it's going to be a challenge. We've got to get the logistical side of it, how the workshops are going to run and what they're going to involve. But I think it'll be very good because I think people will find out they like poetry without actually knowing they like poetry.
Do you think it is an all sort of an automatic poetry?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've kind of got that over the years. I've been doing this probably through the media stuff for about 6 years now. I've been writing since '98, and then really getting popular with it for about 6 years. But people kind of like turn their nose a bit at poetry, and I think the good thing, exciting thing, is that now poetry is becoming in schools, and children are embracing it more. So doing these things with the young children with the workshops, they're already going to know poetry and they're going to be taught it at school, and then we're going to show them a different side of poetry, how they can actually, what they're being taught at school, okay, they're probably being taught bog standard Shakespeare and all that, but we're going to show them a different spin on it, and I think that's what would be interesting. Also just interesting for me to see how it works and how people get used to it.
Has there been any other people in your family then that have been on the creative side of things, or are you the first one to embrace this?
Well, my son actually and my daughter are both creative musically. They play instruments. My son is just going grade 5 trumpet, so he's really good, and he actually wants a career in music.
Right.
My cousin actually is in music. She kind of plays with the BBC Orchestra, and she has done loads of things on the TV and everything. So I think there is a creative side in everyone. I think sometimes you've just got to be either shown it or realise it yourself, that everyone, I think you are creative, no matter whether it's music, football, whatever, any kind of area. Building, bricks, laying that brick with the cement, and then my mind is always thinking of poetry. If there's a wall that's not done properly, it's because I was thinking of poetry at the time, unfortunately.
Radio Nene Valley, this is, well, it's me and him over there.
Yeah.
I'm Kevin Askew, he's James McInerney, Northampton poet. Do you like being called a poet, or are you...
I don't know, it's a weird title because, like you say...
It's oldie worldy, isn't it?
Yeah, it does scare me in a way, in the fact that people label you as a poet, and then people think of poetry not in the most positive way, and then you think, you're immediately dismissed from the start, and... It's not the case, really.
Often you hear people refer to as performance poets and things,
yes,
don't you?
Or writer. But then writer, my first mindset of thinking of writer is somebody writes a book, like a story. And so you think of writer with poetry is, it's weird. I don't know, it's a weird...
We're stuck with poet then, really.
Yeah, I'm stuck with poet, unfortunately.
Now, you got the book's out on Amazon at the moment,
yeah.
and in the libraries available, so if people want to go have a look in the library, if you're lucky, you might have to order it because it's spending a lot of time out at various people's houses. How do you actually go about getting a book published?
Well, I think nowadays, with the way the world's going, self-publishing is massive. In the old days, people used to get published, but the problem with publishing houses or poetry presses is they get thousands of manuscripts every day. They've probably got a desk full of manuscripts of everyone's works and books. And with the current climate, money-wise, they're probably limited to how many they can publish anyway. With me, I'm kind of like fidgety, so I want to get things going and I'm organised. So I went down the self-publishing route, kind of like, instead of, because obviously you send your things out to publishers and it never get anything back, you never hear from them. But I'm glad I did go down that route because it's become so popular and you've got so much more control over the book. You get to sell on the biggest marketplace, Amazon. You get to design the book how you want to design the book. You get to put everything in that you want to get put in without editing.
So do you have total editorial control over it?
Yeah, everything. And you also get to sell it anywhere you want. So I could now go to, say, iTunes I think it's December I can do it, and basically put my book on iTunes and have it on Kindle as well. There's no restrictions, and even Penguin, the biggest booksellers, they brought the massive biggest chunk in this selling market of like self-publishing market there is. So they own the biggest self-publishing chunk in the market, so they can see the way the world's going.
Well, I think a lot of people think self-publishing. So have you got a spare bedroom and a shed full of books?
No, because the good thing with Amazon as well is they print to order. So there's no outgoing costs. So if anybody wants to write their own book, basically you upload the whole thing to Amazon. They print the books per order. You can order books yourself. If I do things like I have publishing, I'll go off and I do things on radio and I take promotional stuff with me. You can order books yourself at a really reduced price. But if people order books, there's no outgoing costs. They print to order.
So there's nothing in their warehouse then?
No, it's all digitally kept on file.
Okay.
And if people order it, they print to order and they ship all around the world. And to me, it gives you full control. You've then you're the person in charge and you can sell it anywhere you want. So you can put it on iTunes, you can put it on Kindle, and you've got full editorial control of everything. And I know a lot of people that are doing that now, self-publishing, and having really, really good fun and doing well with it. And I've done so much stuff in the media, probably more than I would do if I was published, because I've got full control to go where I want, speak to who I want, and do everything myself. I'm not bound by timelines, restrictions, or anything like that. And to me, that's been the best thing I've ever done. And I'll continue to keep doing that for the next books and everything.
So Amazon doesn't tend to get a very good press from bookshops and from lots of the more sort of successful authors, but it's been very good to you.
I think Amazon is very good, especially the self-publishing. I mean, you don't have to do it for Amazon. There's loads of places you could do it through, but it's definitely good for if you like your work and other people to get your work out there. And because I've been on the radio stations, I went on the BBC and they said to me, "Obviously, you've got a book out," and I said, "No, I haven't." They said, "Why haven't you?" I said, "Because I hadn't thought about it, and then like I was go down the self-publishing route and get your book self-published." And since then, you've got a book out now. You haven't got to wait for other people to do it. It's you own everything, and it's all copyrighted. The second it's self-published, it gives everything copyrighted. And I just kind of felt that you're always waiting for people. Your career or whatever you want to do gets put on hold while some publishing house has your book sat on their desk waiting to get around to it, even if they do, and everything you want to do. If you're a person like me that wants to get on and do things, I wanted it out there, a physical copy, and it's gone well because they're selling well. So to me, it's a win-win.
Because realistically, in this day and age, no publisher is going to take a chance on an unknown, are they?
In the current climate, they're scared of obviously cost of money and the money they put into like promotion and everything. If it isn't good, they're worried, and they're limited to amount of books they can publish per year anyway. Probably most of them are. And you can imagine the amount of manuscripts they must get sent to them, and the amount of poetry, and then also poetry is a hard thing to sell anyway, like to a publisher. So unless you're Shakespeare, come back from the grave, it's quite hard. So you're fighting a constant battle. So to me, the self-publishing route is 100%. If you're a writer, get your work out there and then start promoting yourself. Is definitely. But I mean, with this, I can actually speak to the council. They're going to help promote me anyway. So I mean, the promotion side is being done by somebody else, so you can actually still get that promotion side. You've just got to know where to go and who to speak to.
Great stuff. Should we have another poem?
Yeah. Talking about like shorter poems, this is a shorter one, but this one was actually written to music. It actually got radio airplay. So it just goes to show, even though it's a short poem, people can be creative with it, change it up a little bit and make a song out of it as well. So this one's called Today, Not Tomorrow. Tomorrow's sky will never show such beauty as it did today. The way the sun sets and rises will happen in a different way. The rain may fall again upon me, though it won't taste or feel the same. The wind may be calm and gentle, yet it still won't recite your name. The world will keep on turning as though it knew no other way. It won't have realised how beautiful it was just yesterday.
Yeah, because I think we've played a couple of your poems that have been Poppy, I think, did Poppy Khan?
Poppy and Annie, who was a really good lady lives in Switzerland now. She was probably one of the first ones that got radio airplay in the Netherlands, and that really professional sounding songs. I'm currently working with an artist in Russia. She's a recording artist as well, who's basically done one version. I've heard a demo of it, and it sounds like a Eurovision song, but a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's usually mutually exclusive phrases. There,
I would normally
and...
say Eurovision, but it sounds it's amazingly well done. She's gone back to the studio because you can get airplay another radio station to re-record it and make it sound a lot more professional.
Nice.
And it's just amazing how, obviously they are lyrics anyway, poems. They can be quite easily used as lyrics. So I just like the idea of using it to basically show people a different side of poetry, and then they realise they like it. I say, actually, you like poetry now, and they don't realise that, and I like the idea of that. So
we've got Russia, with the Netherlands. It seems to be fairly popular in the Netherlands. Where else? Is there a part of the world where your poems are especially popular, or is it everywhere?
I think everywhere. I mean, I don't really look at where it is popular, but I know obviously I'd love to be really popular in Northampton. That'd be a good thing, and maybe doing these poetry workshops and doing the book signings gets you a bit more noticed. But unfortunately, in today's world, you could live in Northampton but be popular in America. Without even being in America. It's the crazy thing. But it'd be lovely to really be noticed in Northampton as doing well. Because obviously I've lived all my life. I've never moved away, and I probably never will do. Unless Miami call me, and then yes, maybe. But it'd be nice to be recognised in your hometown as doing something really good, and maybe I strive to work towards doing things in other places and getting noticed for that, so that maybe you can be, oh yes, he's from Northampton, and that'd be lovely. I think that would be nice to me.
If someone is interested in poetry, not just from reading it, but I think they might like to give it a try. What sort of route could they take? I
think first of all is to just start getting pen and paper out, start writing, seeing kind of like, I found that it's best not to be too influenced by other writers. I never kind of read any poetry, which is again the weird thing of why I write poetry. I never read any poetry of the old style poets. I think the worry is that if you start reading a lot of people's works, is their works start coming into yours, and plagiarism and that.
Is that always a bad thing?
It's not, but I think it's sometimes to develop your own style of writing. I kind of didn't want to be a copy of someone else's, and so I think the best thing is to kind of develop your own style of writing that is you. So when people read my poems, they'll message me and say they like my style of poetry. So I think it's good to have a style. So start kind of writing the way you want to start writing. Don't be scared of thinking you've got to write a certain way. And I think that's the biggest fear, is that people think they should write a certain way. And I think that's the whole point of doing this workshops with the council, is to show them, don't be scared of just writing how you want to write. And I think that people kind of change who they are because of they feel they need to write a certain way. So write and feel confident that when you write because you want to write and not because you do it a certain way.
So is there never a wrong way of writing? And
I don't think
we don't have to have this has to rhyme and
I think
so many lines and all this sort of thing.
That's the worry. I think people feel as though there's too many restrictions. So you have to write, this has got to be rhymes. This next line's got to rhyme. This has got to be structured in a certain way. And I think that puts people off. It's like a load of barriers before they even start. I think the whole idea is just to write down. That's what I started doing. I just started writing, and obviously not knowing about poetry was a good thing for me, because I didn't actually have the preconceived ideas of how it should be written. I just started writing, and obviously over the years I have become more critical of my writing, but I still do write of how I want to write. So start kind of doing that, and then from there share it with people. I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to go out and share it with people and see if people like it. Because you could write 1 million poems and think they're okay, and people could really love them when you put them online.
Because what makes something a poem as opposed to just a collection of random words? Because if you haven't got to rhyme with the previous line, and you haven't got to have so many lines, or it's not going to be like a limerick or anything. Yeah. What makes it a poem and not just?
Yeah, I think there is a kind of blurred line of what a poem is, and I think that's the problem. I think that people kind of worry that they're not writing poetry, because I've read people's words before, and I said it's a brilliant poem. They said, I'm not really sure if it is a poem. Well, it is, because a poem really is a collection of your thoughts on paper. For me, that's what I see it as. Poetry is a collection of thoughts on paper. So if people write down their emotions and their feelings, to me, it's poetry. And I think you could assign the label poetry to everything. You could assign it to a song. It could be poetic, and you think it could be a song, but it could also be very poetic in its tone. I think it's just a title, but I think if you get stuck into titles, then there's a worry that you're going to you'll conform to a certain way. So I think just have a go and not fear too much that you're not writing poetry kind of thing.
So don't overanalyze it.
I think I did that to start with, and it's a killer, really. It does knock the creativity out of you, and you start feeling, is this right, is this wrong for a poem? And you've got to put that to one side and just write and hope that people like it.
So I suppose on some occasions, are your random tweets, are they poems in their more basic?
I do use Twitter, actually. When you're feeling creative and you're not in the mood for writing a whole poem, you just feel like you get a few lines, I kind of put them on Twitter, and then people share them, retweet them, and reuse them. And I even had one guy that has basically used them and got them put in a picture and he's got it up on his wall. So it's just, I think poetry's everywhere. I think whether it's 140 characters on Twitter or whether it's a 2-page poem or a small poem, I think it's everywhere. I think if you try and classify it as it's got to be a certain style and way, people start to get a bit scared and nervous and think, oh, I can't do that. And I think with these workshops, it's going to be taking that scariness away from the word poetry and giving people a sense of being creative. And then actually, I think you'll get better results than if you say this is a poetry class. They're going to think, ooh, I don't like that. Because probably all they really know is Shakespeare, and they've, and I think that's just the fear, is taking that illusion away that poetry is just Shakespeare. And that's what I've done over all the years of the radio shows and the newspaper and magazines, is trying to get rid of that horrible thing that poetry is Shakespeare, Byron, Milton, Paradise Lost and all that kind of thing. And it's not, and it could be so much more. And I think that's starting to change now, especially with the children doing it at school. So I'm really excited.
Well, so if anyone would like to find out more information when it is available on these workshops, I suppose it's James Wicks Poetry. Bung it into Google. Yeah, I'll take you to the website
or Twitter. On Twitter, I'm MillsMC07. I kind of post it everywhere. I'm kind of got a selection of the best social media sites, and I cross post all the stuff so as everyone who's on different sides can see when I'm doing things. And I think pretty much we're getting the logistical side of it sorted, all the forms filled out and everything, but they're aiming to kind of like get workshops, or at least the first workshop done for kind of like December.
Oh, right.
But and a book signing, but it could all change. It could all be with busy Christmas time and everything else. It could all change, but the current plan is December. When that could be, it could be the end of December, or it could be January, So at the moment, it's all go and it looks good. But it's just getting it all sorted and getting the content right for the workshops, so that when we do the workshops, everything is right from the start, as opposed to kind of making it up as you go along.
Well, we're almost running out of time. We've got a little more chat with James, but first let's have another one of your poems. What are you going to read for us now?
I'm going to read. This is a more darker one. Obviously, there's a lot more lighter ones, but this is just a darker one. It's actually about depression, strangely enough. It's called Swirling Mist, and the swirling mist is basically the depression. So it goes like this. I came across a swirling mist beyond the realms of borrowed time. It lingered in a cloud-like haze and consumed the workings of my mind. For as I stood within its grasp, a stranger in a foreign place, although it bore no eyes as such, I felt its gaze upon my face. And as I tried to turn my head, its line of sight remained in view, for everywhere my vision roamed, so my panic grew and grew. And though the day was not yet done, the darkness came and stole its light, allowing the painful memories from my past the freedom of a second life. For as I fell down to my knees, engulfed in thoughts I used to own, the familiar face of sorrow smiled to remind me of my journey home.
Yes, not quite so happy as some of them.
No. I just thought I tried to cover different genres. So obviously people like all different types of poems. And when I do the darker ones or things like that, people do actually like those because they can relate to them. In a certain part of their life, they've been through depression or something, and they can read that and say, that's about me, And that's why I kind of like try and touch on all the different genres and subjects, happy, sad. And I think as a poet, you've got to cover all those different kind of
playing to
areas.
the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Now, if anybody is interested and wants to either get in touch or to find out a little bit more about you, what are all the options that they've got available?
Right, I've limited it down anyway, so there's not too much. We've got the basic, which is Facebook, which is me, my name, James McInerney. Twitter, I'm at MillsMC07. YouTube, where everything is posted, all the media stuff I do, is Mills, MILLS MC 1977. Obviously, my website, which is James Wicks Poetry. Just search me in Google. Email they're all on the website. I mean, basically, if you go to the website, type my name into Google anyway, the website has everything. So obviously, if people miss anything on the radio, they can just get everything from the website.
Okay. Now, keep us in touch. Let us know when the poetry workshops are going to happen, and we can let people know about that. Thanks, James.
Okay, thank you.